the next stuff that we have to understand now, because we are on the Azure DevOps, we are not going to use the Git repositories or the GitHub for that purpose. Now, before I go ahead, there's a difference in Git and GitHub. They're not same. What is the difference now you understand between Git and GitHub? So guys, understand the key difference between Git and GitHub is that Git is an open source tool which developers install locally to manage the source code, while GitHub is an online service to which developers who use Git can connect and upload or download their resources. GitHub is more of like an online portal where you host your code, upload them, download them, create versions, and it becomes more of like a distributed repository, but you work with that with the help of the Git framework on your local machine. That's called Git. So the next thing, we have GitHub which stores repos, but because we are using Azure, we are not going to use the GitHub repos. What we are going to use? The Azure repos. So you can understand what an Azure repos is now as compared to the GitHub repo. So what is Azure repo? It's a version control tool which helps you manage your code with the help of Git or the TFVC. That means both centralized and the distributed version are supported on the Azure repos. Now, we've known what GitHub is, that it's owned by Microsoft, it's open source community, and if you can migrate from the TFVC to Git, it basically means that moving from the centralized repository to the Git ecosystem. Now, this is something which is more of like the migration side. Now we can really import a repository. And what is importing a repository, guys, is what we just did on the local machine. We actually cloned a repository. Now we can really authenticate the Git repos, and we can really saw that. So when we downloaded, this is the whole Git SCM stuff that we did it, and we actually authenticated repos. Now when we first connect to the Git, you basically connected the Git. We did run a command which is git config, and from there we basically manage and created local credentials. But if you go on GitHub, we can really get that job done, and we can actually have those things done. So the first thing for today is controlling the Git repos. So let's get started with that. Okay, so now guys, this is my Visual Studio Code, which is where, in these labs we have to open the repository to get things done. So to do that, what we do, we go back to our which is the repos, and in the repos you will see on the top right a button says clone. Now when here we click on the clone button, and it should say clone in VS Code. Remember that, guys, it should say clone in the VS Code. And we click on clone in VS Code, it's gonna open the Visual Studio Code on its own for me. And you say that, hey, we want to open this URI. I will say yes, open that, and now it's gonna say, hey, where do you want to store the repository? So let's store in the C drive. I think that's the best way. And you will see at the bottom it's actually cloning the repository. Okay, so it's cloned the window. If I say open in a new window, we should have the repository here on the left, which is great. It's gonna just install some dependencies on its own. Yeah, when it's cloned, everyone click on open in the new window. Okay, it will ask you to pop up, click on open in the new window. Guys, click on a terminal and you should be inside that repository that we have downloaded. That should be C parts unlimited. Perfect. Now if you open that doc, we are going to configure this. So exercise 1, task 1 is what we are going to do, and we are going to just run the command, which is the git config, which we did on the machine also. Git config. That's done. Let's use the name configure it, and I'm going to use my name. Yep, that's done too. And let's do one more thing. Let's write the name here, email as, I'm trying to use the Microsoft so that if you use it later it's fine. And okay, and that's done. So that's the first thing we need to do, guys, is to configure our lab environment with the code that we have. So we have now configured our terminal. We'll start with the next step. So now, since we are done, guys, we need to install the Azure Repos extension in the Visual Studio Code. So we click on search, we gotta go to extension and search Azure Repos. And you will see the first one says Azure Repos. That's the one. Click on install and start installing. Just remember, this is where you find the extension. Say the extension at the bottom. So when it's done, we close it. And if you kind of just delete it, we should see Azure Repos as an enabled extension here. You should be seeing. Next step that we are going to do is, once we have the Azure Repos there, we are going to, so everyone press Control Shift and P. It should open something like this, like a command palette. Control Shift and P. Follow the instruction again. And what we're gonna do is search for team here. Team sign in. And look for team sign in here. Everyone. We click on there. When you click on team sign in, it'll ask you how do we want to authenticate here. So we're gonna say that, hey, I want to authenticate and get an access token automatically. And that's my access token here. So just copy this access token, press enter. It says open. Yep, I want to open this. In the device login, just paste that code we just got from there. Click on next. It'll ask you to sign in. So say that I'm signed in, so I can back to. Now guys, we have learned the committing a change on the Git local. Now we'll see how that really works when we have actually a project working on site. So to do that, on the left side you will see the repository now, which is loaded. So guys, what we do now here, let's make a small change in here, and let's try right on the top here, my first change. And if you see on the left side, we do not have any icon showing anything. Okay, that means we have not made the change yet saved. So what we'll do, we'll click on save. And the moment we did save, you can see on the left side says that, hey, there's one pending change that needs to be executed. So we click on the change and you see that say that, hey, this specific one was modified. This file was modified. So if you click on that, it will show you these two modifications. Earlier it was not there, and now we have it here in this case. So once we do that, we can see the changes here. And what we do here, in here we're gonna commit this. So we will say that, hey, this is my commit. So I will write my commit the way we do this. And if you press Control plus Enter, it's gonna say, hey, do you want me to commit the changes? And I will say, yes, I want to do that. And it's gonna start committing. And you see now the new file is also with the change. And let's say if I make some more changes, let's say more, if I go back to the file and let's make one more small change, I will say new change, save it, go back to the one here, we'll say change, click on here and let's call it, let's say new change, Control Enter, and just select that, hey, I want them to commit automatically. So just select always, and we will see the new change here. So that's the synchronized change is happening. And see at the bottom here, it was synchronizing, but now it has already done everything. So that was something that we have actually did a commit on the file on the repository. We just learned, guys, how to commit a source code and make the changes there. And after this, we're gonna actually make sure that these changes we actually did locally, they should be available on the Azure DevOps portal. And that's the magic of DevOps. So whatever we do locally, it's gonna be there on the actual DevOps portal. So we'll see that.